Hey everybody, it's Brett here with Tampa Marine Tuning, and today I've got Sam's 24-foot Blue Wave with the Yamaha 250 on the back. He's a good customer of ours, and he's letting us borrow it to show you guys our updated information on how to remove your ECU, and as well as how to identify your ECU numbers to place your order. All you're going to need to get this process done as far as removal goes is a 10mm socket. It's that easy. So before we do anything else, the first thing we got to do is take our cover off. Most of you guys are going to know how to do this, but you got 3 handles that are going to pull out like this. On the sides, on the back there's 2, on the front there's 1. From there, I find it's easiest to do this with the motor down, but you guys can do what's easiest for you. You can lift the motor off from the top at this point. So with our cowl off, we're now going to be able to get access to our ECU. Now, depending on which motor you have, this is going to be located in a couple of different places. So all of your V6 engines, they're going to be located right here on the back behind this plastic cover. This is held on with 4 rubber grommets. Now, all of your 4-cylinder engines are going to be located on the front of the motor. With the exception of mechanical 4-cylinders, there'll be an ECU right here. But all in all, it's going to be up front. V8 engines are going to be up front also. So with that in mind, if you were to do this on the water, you may want to trim your motor up at this point if you have a V6, because it's going to be kind of hard to get back here if we're in the water right now. So that's something to think about with all of that. So once you're at this spot, you can remove your covers to see where your ECU is. And for our example here, we'll pop this plastic cover off. Just for the record, this doesn't float. Don't ask me how I know. So you want to put this somewhere where it won't blow away. So with that pulled off, here we have our ECU. Now, if you've yet to order with us, this is going to be one of the things that we're going to ask you for right here. We're going to ask you for your ECU part number, and you can see it stamped right here into the body of the ECU, 6FR01. When you're doing the checkout process on the product page, we're going to make you select that before doing anything else. So at this point, you could go ahead and make your order, do everything like that. If you're one of our local customers, you wouldn't necessarily need to go any further. If you're local to the Tampa Bay area and you've talked with us and we've scheduled an in-person service, a lot of times we'll ask you for this number. This is all you have to do. You can put the boat back together and we'll take care of the rest. So for our customers that are remote, that are going to mail in these ECUs to us, this is where we're going to have to disconnect this guy. Now, before we do anything else, before we touch this ECU any further, you want to make sure that you disconnect the power to the engine. Now, more often than not, you can get that done by turning off the switch, the battery switch in your boat. A good way to test to make sure that you have no power would be to hit your trim button here, make sure that the motor doesn't trim at all. You could also try to start it. This also has an added benefit to where it'll discharge any extra energy or any extra electricity that happens to maybe still in the system. It's all gone now, and we're safe to remove this. If you want to be extra safe, it will not hurt to just go ahead and unplug the batteries directly, so you can unbolt the cables to the batteries to make sure that there genuinely is no power. And the reason that we do any of this is because there can be a scenario where if you take these bulkhead connectors off this ECU, when there's power here, it could put the ECU in a fail-safe mode, which means it's not going to start, it's not going to run. It would be a bad day. And so that's why we want to be really thorough and just make sure we've got the power off before we go any further with actually removing our ECU. Now that we're here, you're going to go ahead and unplug your ECU. Now, these connectors are pretty straightforward. A lot of the ECUs have this style connector. There's a little push button release here, and you'll pull it off. So that little tab there is what holds this weather pack connector on. So you've got the 3. So you do all 3, just like so. You're gonna find on some ECUs, there will be maybe 2 instead of 3. Some have 3. You'll also find some that have a flat face, and there's like a little spring release lever with 2 plugs. That's kind of a different style. And then on certain 4-cylinder ECUs, instead of it having 2 or 3 connectors, it's 1 long horizontal connector, but it has the same push button release style deal that you've got here. So now that you've got this here, you've got these 4 10mm bolts. You would loosen each of these, taking them off, like so. You're going to find that they're not going to be super tight or anything like that. When you go to put it back on, you do not have to tighten the absolute heck out of them. They'll be perfectly fine, snugged up. Oh, that's another thing you don't want to do is drop them in the water. These also don't float. This I have not done before, but I imagine you can figure out they don't float. So once you've got this taken off, you're ready to package this bad boy up and ship it to us. Now, something to keep in mind here, a lot of our customers are gonna have boats with multiple engines. If you've got a boat with multiple engines, now's a good time to maybe put a piece of tape on here and write down which ECU goes to which engine. This is helpful because there's runtime information stored in these ECUs, specific trouble codes, hours, you name it, different little things like that that are gonna be specific. And so when you go to put them back on, if you mix them up, it's not gonna hurt anything, but it's always a good idea to just keep them with the motor that they came off of. Once you've got this ECU out, it's gonna be a good idea to go ahead and put these bolts back where they came from, or put them somewhere safe. That way, when you get the ECU back from us and it's all tuned, you got everything right here that you need to be able to throw this back together and go out on the water to test drive. So at this point, with our new process that we have, the return shipping, so the shipping from us to you once it's been tuned, is gonna be paid for at checkout. So when you purchase this online, that's already paid for and taken care of. All that you have to do is pay for the shipping to us. So you would go to the shipping carrier of your choice and you're gonna pay to send this to our address, which you get an email about telling you all the details on where you're gonna send it once you've purchased. When you go to pack this thing up, you wanna do a pretty good job, do the best you can. Ziploc bag's a good idea. They're pretty waterproof as it is, but it wouldn't hurt in case the box got wet. Copious amounts of bubble wrap. You wanna make sure it's nice and safe. If they kick the box around, it's not gonna get damaged. We're gonna recommend for shipping insurance that you choose about $1,500. So depending on the ECU in the year, they range from about $1,000 to about $2,000. So if you do that $1,500 shipping insurance, if something did happen to it, it got lost, it got severely damaged, then it's gonna be taken care of and you're gonna be either made completely whole or almost all completely whole, maybe if you have one of the more expensive ones. If you guys have been following our brand for a little while, you may have noticed that our shipping address has actually changed. Now the reason for that is we've done so many of these, there's been a time or two where someone wasn't there to sign for the package right when it was being dropped off. And it has to be signed for because of how much insurance is typically on most of these ECUs. And so what'll happen in that scenario is it'll go back to the shipping distributor, and it's gonna delay us being able to get it, get the tune done, and get it back to you. And that's not what we want at all. And so what we have now is a local mailbox at our local shipping distributor. And so that's where this ECU is gonna go. And you can still ship through whatever carrier you would like to that mailbox. You can use UPS, FedEx, USPS, DHL, you name it. If you can figure it out, you can ship it to that address. It's not a concern whatsoever. Now, once we receive this ECU, if we receive it before noon, we're typically gonna tune it and we're gonna put it back in the mail to you same day. So it's gonna get done, it's gonna go right back in the mail. Now, if it's a little bit later in the day, somewhere after noon, it may get done and then shipped out very first thing the next morning. So it just kind of depends on what's going on schedule-wise for us. But the main thing that you need to take away is you're gonna either get same-day service or you're gonna get it well within 24 hours. It's gonna be headed back to your location so you can bolt it back in and get back on the water. As far as the reinstallation goes, the first thing you wanna do is make sure that the batteries or the power is still turned off. So batteries are still disconnected or the power is still turned off. We've got no power here before putting this back in. So we take our 10mm bolts, we pop these guys out, we throw the ECU back in its original location. It's pretty easy to figure out as far as the orientation. Obviously the plugs are only on one side. The harness is here as well. So it's pretty easy to go, okay, that's where that goes right here. So you can either bolt it up first or plug it in first. It doesn't really matter which way you do it. You go ahead and put your bolts back in, like so. You would snug all these down. Like I said, you don't have to go crazy tight. These are, in fact, just in plastic. So if you tighten the absolute living heck out of them, it would probably mess them up. So you'd bolt these guys down, tighten them all up. You then replace whatever cover your ECU may have had. So for this V6, there was the plastic cover with the grommets on the back. Some of the 4 cylinders will have a bolted in plastic piece in the front, and so on. But you put all that back on, you can now turn your power back on, and you're ready to test it out and see how your new Nizpro tune done by Tampa Marine Tuning is gonna perform.